Hey everyone, in this video we're going to cover the stock overview pages as well as some of those different data sets that you can find within the stock overview. We'll start off right here looking at the stock overview page for Apple. On this overview landing page, there's already a ton of helpful information. At the top, we have the net premium chart for the stock, which tracks net call and net put premiums, meaning ask side minus bid side transactions, just like the market tide feature for the market as a whole that we discussed in another video. However, on an individual ticker, this chart has even more to offer. For example, you can set this to view options volume as a whole over several different time frames. And you can organize it to set it as call or put premiums or call or put volumes. You can also display the average volume for the ticker across 7, 14, and 30-day time frames. You can switch it between volume and the put-call ratio as well. Now here, looking at the volume itself rather than the put-call ratio over the same time span, the red cloud displays the put volume, while the light red line tracks the 7-day average. The same goes for calls, with the green cloud and the green colored line. And finally, within this chart at the top, you can actually display a simple view of the stock's price movement throughout the day as well. To the right of the chart is a summary of the daily stats for the stock. You can see the previous close, the price at open. You can even see the daily volume versus average volume, dividend dates, earnings dates, the whole shebang. Now down below here, we have a bird's eye view of the options chain, starting off on the left here with the top volume chains from the current day, as well as the table on the right that shows us the chains with the highest open interest. For example, today, the top volume chain was the $185 call for May 10th, 2024 with over 150,000 volume, and the $200 call for 6/21/2024 had the highest open interest with just under 74,000 contracts existing on the market. What you can do here, just like from the flow feed, is if you click on the expiration date, it'll pop up a new window to show you the historical flow for that contract, as well as the volume profile, just like you can do directly from the flow feed or in the options contract lookup page. The overview also shows us the latest news for the company, as well as insider transactions. And then down below here, we also have the daily gamma exposure, analyst ratings, as well as way at the bottom here, a summary of options in both dark pool and lit stock transactions per stock price. Now that's more or less the overview page itself. Next, we'll take a trip over to the volatility page. There are myriad data points on the volatility page that are great for volatility traders and traders who use volatility, such as for covered calls, to protect their shareholdings. Now, there's too much to cover here for an overview video, so we'll have another video soon breaking down this page in its entirety. But at the top here, we can see the implied volatility rank of the stock, the implied volatility compared to its implied volatility 52-week high and low, as well as the same for the realized volatility. One tool on this page that's especially useful for earnings and calendar spread traders is the Volatility Smile. You can set up the chart to display two separate expiration dates, for example. And what some traders will do is they'll find the strike and expiration at which the implied volatility is widest and build out a calendar spread where they sell a near-dated contract to open and buy a longer dated contract to open, with the expectation of stock movement toward the strike price, with limited risk should the stock move in the opposite direction. But like I said, there is a lot to unpack on this volatility page, so we'll touch on this in much more detail in a video of its own. Now from here, there's also a page that tracks exposure to Greeks, In this case, we're seeing the spot gamma for Apple. You can also change this to show charm and Vanna. Now, much like the volatility page, we'll have a video that'll break these down in depth. But for now, just this simple overview. There's also the gamma exposure in its entirety, ranging from daily GEX to the gamma exposure by strike, gamma exposure by expiry, as well as the largest gamma exposure by strike and expiration. You can also view the similar data for delta, charm, and Vanna. But like I said, we'll break this down in depth in another video. Now we'll look at some of the options data you can access from the stock overview. We'll start here with the options chain. Now, the options chain is exactly what it's titled as. You're able to see the information for each strike for that stock across all expiration dates. The columns can show everything from just the volume and open interest. It'll also show the volume carryover into open interest, so you can see the open interest changes here as well. You can also see the Greeks. And again, all of these are fully customizable. You can toggle them on and off as you see fit. Here we're looking at the tab view. We can also switch this to view it as a list, where it'll have a drop down for each expiration date. On that tab's view, you can also have a strike proximity filter. We're currently set to 10 strikes from the current underlying stock price. This can go up to 20, 50, and all of them. From here, we'll check out OI changes, which we've covered in other videos as well. But here, it's for this individual ticker. We're looking at Apple once again. And we can see the open interest across all strikes here. And again, you can toggle this to be within a strike range. So let's say I want to see the open interest changes for strikes 150 to 300. That'll adjust our chart to show only that strike range. You can also see the open interest by expiration date. And at the very bottom here, you can see the highest open interest increase and decrease by raw size or by a percentage of change. Now, the next thing I want to touch on in line with the options data is the flow history. Now, flow history is really important so that you can track through time how options transactions have occurred on a particular ticker. In the flow history page, you'll find first the daily flow breakdown chart at the top, where you can see how both calls and puts have transacted on the stock over time. Now, in this case, we can look at it through the 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, all the way up to all time within this time frame. Below that, we have their averages over the course of the last 3 days, 7 days, and 30 days for both the call volume and the put volume, as well as the put-call ratio and total open interest for the current day. Beneath that, we've got a complete breakdown of the day-to-day Apple call and put transactions and open interest, as well as their premiums in relation to the open and close prices for the stock over time. And lastly, at the very bottom, we can look at the historical flow context for any given expiration and any given strike for the stock. Now, if you want to look back at some of the performance from the stock itself, you can come down to the seasonality panel. On seasonality, you can see the month-by-month, year-over-year returns or losses on the stock. You can also see the daily price change, so marking from open until close, as well as the average returns for this current month in the last 16 years, and a comparison for other stocks within the sector the stock you're viewing falls into, in this case, technology for Apple, for the current month. You can also see the ETF exposure. So this page will show you a breakdown of all the ETFs that have the underlying stock you're looking at in their holdings. In this case, we're looking at Apple, And so we can see that it is in the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index. It's in VOO, SPY, of course, QQQ, and it'll show you the last trading price of that ETF, as well as how many shares are held in that ETF of this particular stock, and the total percentage of that ETF that this stock consists of. So we're looking here, it looks like SPY, for example, has 6.18% of its holdings staked in Apple stock. Now, there are a few more pages that give us some more insight to the historical stock data. Here on the dividends page, you can see all past dividends and their payouts for the stock. To the right, we also hold a chart that shows us the total payouts per share for each given year. For example, in 2019, they had their highest in recent history of $3.04 per share as a total payout for the fiscal year of 2019. You can also see the historical earnings data for the stock, showing us first the current versus average moves around the earnings date. And below, we can also see the expected move versus the actual move that the stock made upon reporting earnings, and a couple more snapshots of the earnings per share and overall financials for the company. At the bottom, we track the historical earnings data, so you can see in table format what the consensus earnings per share was versus actual, whether they beat or miss and by how much, as well as the stock movement up to 2 weeks prior to earnings and 2 weeks after earnings. You can also change the expected versus actual move percentage between 4 and 8 quarters of reporting. And the financials, you can switch between quarterly financials and annual financials. Now we can also move over to the financials page to see a full breakdown of the company's financials. Here you can see everything from their income statement to their balance sheet. You can even see as nitty-gritty as their cash flow statement. So for those who invest long in stocks, these financials pages are super important to keep track of. And finally, we can even view insider transactions made by senior members of the company. For example, we can also see here that the COO of Apple, Jeffrey Williams, sold 59,000 shares of Apple at a price of $172.22, lowering his stake in the company by about 10.5%. We can also see the shorts on the stock here, where we can see the short interest volume over time, as well as the total short shares available over time. Down at the bottom, we maintain a number of shares available, as well as a historical view of failures to deliver per the SEC. You can also see the borrow rates and the rebate rate, as well as the short volumes per exchange across several different exchanges. Well, that just about wraps it up for all of the data points you can find within the stock overview page on Unusual Whales. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll have some deeper, in-depth breakdowns on some of these tools in their own respective videos. But in the meantime, I hope this helped you learn and discover what data you can find within these overviews.